Welcome back, everybody, to English with John. I know it's coming up on 6 months now that I haven't cut my hair. Today, we're not going to be talking about my hair. Nope, we're not doing hair idioms. We're not doing real English with hair. Today, we're talking about a little bit more serious of subject called toxic. Basically, if you look in the dictionary, toxic just means like some sort of substance. Let's call it kind of poison, although there is a difference between a toxin and a poison. But it's type of a substance that's going to cause harm to your body. It's a type of poison for your body. But that's not what this concept means. This concept has been around for a while now. I mean, I learned about this when I was younger. Well, at least I knew it when I was younger, but it's been gaining a lot of traction these days. And that concept of toxic, it doesn't mean that poison or that substance. What it means is like a person or an action or even like a type of emotion that is harmful to another person or harmful even to yourself. It's basically something that harms someone, especially emotionally, but as we will find out a little bit later in this video, a little bit hurting physically as well. So I wouldn't quite call this a happy video, but it is going to be talking about some language and a word that is used, well, quite often these days, especially one concept that's a little bit hard to understand, but we'll get it fully understood by the end of this video. Let's get into it. So there are top 3 ways that this word, this adjective toxic, is used in everyday life. In everyday conversations, there's going to be 1, toxic relationships, toxic behavior, and finally, toxic masculinity. Toxic relationships are basically relationships where one person is being toxic to the other person. One person is harming the other person in the relationship. And by relationship, yes, of course it's going to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but it can also be your work relationships. It can also be your family relationships. It can also be, your colleagues, the people at school. Anytime you have that continued interaction with another human being, that can be called a relationship. And so when that relationship harms you, or when you are harming another person in that relationship, intentionally or not, it can be called a toxic relationship. So let's kind of look at an example. Let's say person A is toxic, and let's say person B is their spouse. So person A is always pointing out like the failures of person B. They're always telling person B what they're doing wrong. They're always telling person B that their actions, their mindset, their thoughts are just not right. Like person A is right, person B is wrong. And they keep doing that to person B. Now, of course, this is gonna make person B feel very bad. And they're gonna feel bad about themselves. They're gonna feel self-conscious. They're gonna feel hurt. And they're gonna feel quite, dejected, or in a way kind of like pushed down. Their worth, their self-worth, their feeling of who they are, the value of themselves is going to be going down and down and down. And so this can be called a sort of toxic relationship. They will always feel like a failure because person A is always telling them they're a failure. I mean, in the end, person B is going to be sad, they're going to be depressed, they're going to be possibly angry, hurt, they might be very confused, and a whole slew of other negative emotions that could come from this relationship. So yeah, that's a toxic relationship. But what about toxic behavior? You see, where toxic relationship was talking about a person who was toxic, toxic behavior is focusing on the actions that are toxic. Some toxic behaviors can include things like lying a lot, obviously, gaslighting, which is trying to make the other person feel crazy or like they're wrong. It could be selfishness, of course. It could be, you saying you're always right and that person is always wrong. The toxic behavior might be making the other person feel guilty all the time. Kind of things like this. So these are different types of toxic behaviors. And again, basically a toxic behavior is a behavior that makes another person hurt, feel bad, feel worthless, but get harmed in some typically emotional way. Now we have the term for what a person is when they're toxic, and we have a term for what behaviors are when they're toxic, right? Now let's get to the last term, and the last term is going to be a little bit more on the difficult side. I will be explaining a lot of things. I will give you a basic definition, and then I will explain that definition. Toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is this idea that people have where culture has taught men to be toxic people, especially to women or those who they consider weaker than themselves. So to be a bit more simple, basically it's culture teaching men to be toxic or to have toxic behaviors. So let's go into this a little bit deeper, because it kind of goes into these classic or traditional ideas of what men are. Men are strong, men don't have emotions or shouldn't have too big of emotion. Men are the protectors of others. These are sort of the ideas that people say cause toxic masculinity. I mean, just answer some of these questions. If you know a man, or if you are a man yourself, what does it mean to be a man? If you're a man, should you ask for help? Should you show emotions? Should you cry? Should you be sad? Should you be strong and lead others? Should you be a good leader? If someone hurts you, should you try to take revenge on them? Well, if you look at a lot of the traditional or classic ideas of what a man is, then you will see that a lot of the answers to these questions are you shouldn't have emotion. You should be strong. If you do have emotion, it should be anger and revenge. You should be that leader in someone's life. You shouldn't cry, especially in front of others. So these are the type of ideas that would have that toxic masculinity. So why is this toxic? I mean, if a man decides to act this way or that way, and the people around him are okay, then how is this, kind of a toxic idea? People who support this idea or who are proponents of this idea say that toxic masculinity causes toxic behavior, which harms others in the relationship and even harms the man themselves. For example, if a man doesn't talk about their emotions, then of course the people around him can't understand why that man is angry or why that man is sad. And often if you are someone who has this toxic masculinity, you would be angry if you're sad, or angry if you're embarrassed, or whatever other emotion you had, it would quickly turn into anger instead. And because they don't understand, they don't know how to help that person. And because that person, that man, cannot get help and cannot ask for help, they get more angry and they do some behaviors which might be harmful for the others. Behaviors which include yelling, screaming, emotional abuse, and even physical abuse. So yeah, that's the idea of toxic masculinity. A lot of people talk about it these days. It's a very big concept online and offline. And I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew exactly what this word and exactly what this feeling of toxic meant when it was talking about people, behaviors, or this concept of toxic masculinity. All right, so simply, toxicity, being toxic, is talking about an action or a person or maybe a mindset that causes harm to others, sometimes yourself, in an emotional way and sometimes a physical way. Well, that is some more Real English with John. And please definitely subscribe. Don't miss a video. You're going to learn a lot of stuff in the upcoming months and years. If you have any questions or observations, definitely drop them down in the comments below. I will read them all. Anyways, we'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.